I have said for a long time that I think more than a couple of the hosts at the Fox propaganda outlet have a bit of a humiliation kink, that they love for a Democrat to come on to clean their proverbial clock, to humiliate them and to call out their lies. But the step above that is Will Cain, who might be the stupidest person to ever appear on network television. And we've seen that lately as Democrats are flooding his show to take the oh so enjoyable opportunity of just leaving him speechless and embarrassed, which is exactly what Jake Auchincloss did, having to explain what due process is to Will Cain on his show. It was a humiliating takedown. We're going to get into it all, but before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way, and it really does mean a lot to me. Now let's check out this appearance from Congressman Jake Auchincloss, just setting Will Cain straight.
Congressman Auchincloss, thank you for being with us. I know we tried to make this happen the other day. I'm glad we were able to revisit and get together here on this Friday. I didn't even bring up the amount of money that we're spending on war across this world that does not seem to, on its surface, serve the American citizen. And on that front, it's not exclusively a Democrat issue. There are many Republicans as well, I would argue, that aren't serving the American interest. But why is it on so many of these issues we just highlighted, that of illegal immigrants, the Democrats seem to be serving the interests of people who are not citizens of America?
Will, thanks for having me on. It's about freedom. Freedom means freedom from fear. Fear of criminals, freedom from fear of terrorists, and also freedom from the fear that the government is going to harass you. And that means that everybody whose feet is on American soil gets to stand in front of a judge and have equal justice under law. We protect that for everybody.
Well, Congressman, I appreciate that. And I appreciate you saying you also have a right to be free from criminals and free from terrorism. That, of course, would be rights of the American citizen, some of which is being infringed upon by these illegal immigrants. I think on that we can agree. We've seen the crime, both you and I. We've seen the crime by some of these illegal immigrants. I know that's not something, I would hope that's not something that you would tolerate. But on the right to be free from the government and stand on this soil, equal rights before the law, that's just simply not the way it works. If you're an illegal immigrant in this country, you don't have the exact same rights as an American citizen. You don't have the same exact due process rights as a citizen of America.
Well, here's the challenge. So first of all, let me say, agreed. You commit a crime and you are convicted of that crime, you're out of this country. Totally agree with you. But here's the challenge. Let's imagine it's 3 years from now and instead of a Republican president, it's a Democrat president. And this Democratic president says, you know, this journalist, Will Cain, man, he's really irritating me. And so I am going to lock him up and I'm going to accuse him of sedition and libel. And you call your lawyer and you say, whoa, I want to get a hearing in front of a judge. And the Democratic president says, nope, Will Cain is not legally a citizen because he committed crimes in the past that deprive him of due process. And you don't get a hearing. What I am telling you is that unless we ensure that everybody in this country gets to stand in front of a judge, everybody in this country cannot be confident that they will be able to stand in front of a judge when their political opponents get power.
Congressman, I'm confident that your hypothetical wouldn't even play out under a Democratic president. And I'm confident that you don't believe that either. I'm confident that you don't believe that.
This president, Will, just said, this president just said he wants to apply his extradition of immigrants to El Salvador next to American citizens. Do you understand where this leads, the slippery slope that it takes us to? Until somebody gets to stand in front of a judge, we don't know whether they're illegal. We don't know what crimes they have been convicted of. The point is that politicians don't get to be judge, jury, and executioner. They have to go through the courts of law.
Congressman, I'm well aware now of what you're referencing. I'm not always well aware of every single thing uttered from the President of the United States' mouth. But I am well aware of the statement he issued from the Oval Office about possibly expanding the El Salvadorian deportations to homegrown criminals. He did say very clearly in that clip, we'd have to obey the law. Not once, but twice. Homegrown criminals, but we'd have to obey the law. The reason I stick on that detail, Congressman, is that I feel like your party, even in your hypothetical that you just gave to me, is playing into fear-mongering. You're trying to convince the American citizen that they are going to be in the same situation as an illegal immigrant who's accused of being a member of MS-13, domestic violence, and human smuggling. And it's simply not realistic. In fact, it's fear-mongering to suggest to the American people that somehow deporting Kilmar Brego Garcia means next they're going to deport Will Cain.
Yeah, I think fear-mongering is when the president tries to blame Canada for our problems, right? I'm not fear-mongering. I am defending the core principle of freedom. Freedom from fear. And again, that means that individuals should be able to walk to a CVS and buy some shaving cream without having to ask the clerk to unlock it for them. We absolutely need to address public safety and open-air drug use and homelessness in our downtowns, because people should be able to go around their daily life and have that freedom. But it also means that they are free from government intruding upon their personal liberty. That is a 1,000-year-old tradition of the Anglo-Saxon legal code.
Congressman, one last question for you. I'm sure you've seen it. I know you've seen the polling on the approval rating, the favorability rating among Democrats in Congress. It's plummeted. It's down at 25%. This is according to Gallup. 2 years ago you were at 34%. You're down. You're down to one of the lowest it's ever been. I'm not asking this as a gotcha. I'm genuinely curious what your answer will be to me. Do you think that could be tied to what I'm talking about here today, that increasingly your party is taking unpopular positions with American citizens, American voters, Americans?
Well, I think it was unpopular to allow 5 million individuals to cross the border under the last administration without documentation. I think the inflation was deeply unpopular, and the Democratic Party, like incumbent parties throughout the world, are bearing the brunt of that backlash. I do not think it's unpopular to say to the American people that freedom is not a privilege of citizenship. Freedom is inherent to who we are as Americans.
Rights in the United States are a privilege of American citizenship. Congressman, you're always welcome to come back here. I've enjoyed this conversation. And when I'm arrested by the next Democrat president, I hope you will be somebody that stands on that wall and helps me get out of my prison.
How can you be that stupid? Like, really, this guy has not a clue what he is talking about. And my favorite part of Will Cain's show is that he has been consistently, lately when asked about or called out for something Trump did, going, well, I didn't see that. Like, we saw Maxwell Frost bring up the fact that Donald Trump was talking about wanting to deport homegrowns, wanting to deport American citizens or denaturalize folks who have moved here and become citizens. And Will Cain's response to a very prominent story was, I didn't see that. I don't think that's real. And then he asked Maxwell, where could we possibly find that? And he was like, Google? I don't know. Will Cain cracks me up because he's a Fox News host who it seems like his only diet is actually Fox News. Like, if you just watch Fox News, you wouldn't know of all the terrible things Donald Trump says and does. And although I do not like their hosts, it seems like they may get other news from other places. But Will Cain is just the company man. He just wants to only consume their content. So he's so out of the loop and has no arguments to make or no understanding of like the news climate. It's just funny. He's not a smart guy, which is like not a great advertisement for the brand when you say like this is what you'll look like if you only consume Fox. Oh man, what a moron. But back to Jake, because why we're talking about this, he's bang on. He's spot on. You need due process. Like, how is this a conversation? The right is constantly talking about cancel culture, but now they want to ship people to El Salvador with no evidence, no due process, no trial, no nothing. If that's not cancel culture, what is? Not deciding to go to a comedian's show because you didn't like a joke he made is a lot less of a painful outcome than being shipped to a torture prison in El Salvador because you wore a Chicago Bulls hat? It's insanity. But this is what the government is trying to become, something to intimidate, attack, and scare. And Tim Walz talked more about that in his State of the State address, and I want to take a listen right here.
Now tonight, with the state of our state as strong as it's ever been, we gather to write the next chapter in this great Minnesota story. But I can't help but point out that we also gather at a moment of great uncertainty for our nation. And let's be honest, this uncertainty, this chaos is no accident. The President of the United States has chosen to destroy the federal government's ability to help people. He literally hired the richest man in the world to take a chainsaw to the basic services that Minnesotans rely on to build better lives. His plan leaves nobody there working to prevent the next pandemic, nobody to pick up the phone at the Social Security office, nobody making sure kids with special needs get the quality education they deserve. Just a few months ago, Minnesotans who got ripped off by a bank, a credit card company, a healthcare company, could go to some place in the federal government and seek help and relief. But now the government switched sides. Under this administration, the federal government exists to help the corporations as they screw the American people over. Next up, Medicaid. And everybody in this room and across Minnesota, let's be very clear what it means. 40% of children and more than 1 million of our neighbors in the state of Minnesota rely on Medicaid for their health care. This administration wants to take that health care away. Meanwhile, rural hospitals will be forced to close. All the rest of us, our costs will go up, and state budget will be torn to pieces. The President has also chosen, and I stress this, chosen to tear up the values that once made America the shining light of the world. Now, in this land of the free and home of the brave, we have university students being swept up, shoved into unmarked vans, and fathers being tossed into Salvadorian gulags without a hint of due process. So I want to be real clear about this. If you say you love freedom, but you don't believe freedom is for everybody, then the thing you love isn't freedom, it's privilege.
I always bring up the Russ Vought quote saying that Donald Trump's director of the OMB wanted federal workers to feel traumatized when they came into work. That was his word, traumatized. But it's not just federal workers. It's every American who Donald Trump and Elon Musk, while he was still around at Doge, wanted to feel like the government was broken. That's what Republicans say. They say, we hate government. We want less of it. Elect me, I love government, and I want to be a part of it. And then once they get there, they try to break it so that they can point to a broken government and say, look, it's broken. Let's take it apart and break it some more. To make you distrust it so that they can take away your Social Security, your Medicare, your Medicaid, the programs that keep people alive, housed, fed, educated, and then give another big tax cut to billionaires. That's the whole point. We cannot let them get us to be that level of distrustful or sad or nihilistic. We have to fight back for a more positive vision of what we can build. That's what we're doing on this show. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video. And if you stuck around to the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. Until next time, I'll see you soon.